Welcome back, Richard. It's good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It's good to be here. A little cold, but good to be here.
It is cold. And today we are going to talk about a topic that is a little bit foreign to both of us.
It is indeed. It's a new one.
Yes, it's new, and but it's very interesting. And artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about ChatGPT, but artificial intelligence has been within the realms of psychology for a long time.
Right.
Psychologists have always been very interested in artificial intelligence, and because intelligence in general is within the wheelhouse of a lot of psychologists. We do intellectual assessments. We think about how intelligence and cognitive skills affect a person's functioning and learning abilities and things like that. And so artificial intelligence has certainly been something that psychologists have used in their research. But ChatGPT, a newer form of I guess, product
Right.
within the range of artificial intelligence, it's a new beast. And
This is really new. Yeah. This is really new. And this promises to could potentially have a very profound effect on the way we do things across fields, whether it's business or industry or customer service, education. This ChatGPT is, a few articles have appeared, and we thought it was time to take a closer look at this form of artificial intelligence. That's all this is sort of the next generation of artificial intelligence.
Right.
ChatGPT. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
Yeah.
And this is where I start to lose my way, because it is a type of chatbot.
Yes.
Chat B-O-T. And okay, now what is a chatbot? Okay, so a chatbot is a computer program that's built or designed to simulate conversation with human users. It doesn't just obey commands. We all are familiar with technology that obeys commands, but this actually generates conversation.
Right.
And this is the whole idea of you can talk to a computer and it will talk back to you. Okay.
Right.
Very different. So
and the idea is that, we've all made those phone calls, those really frustrating phone calls where you get a recording that's, that tells you all these things. But as you've, in more recent years, those have gone from, they've transitioned from, press 1 for this or press 2 for that to what is it that you're calling about? And then you answer with your voice, and it pulls things that you say to guide you in different directions. It's what we have seen so far isn't really a conversation as much as it is just some automated responses to whatever it is that you're saying. And you can see that, again, you no matter what you say, I'm not sure what you mean about that. Can you say, and it will repeat the question. But it's not a conversation.
No, it's more like a decision tree.
Right.
It'll say, what's the purpose of your call? Say, pay my bill. Well, then the program takes you to that part of the discussion. So you're not talking about anything else. You're talking about pay my bill.
Right.
But it's a decision tree.
Right.
The difference with this is that it actually can create language, and it can respond to your questions using a language-based program.
Right. It will respond with novel content as opposed to pre-recorded or prescribed content. It will generate content, and that again, that takes us into a very different realm of experience when it comes to artificial intelligence.
That's right. So when we talk about AI, there are really two types of AI. One is weak and one is strong. So the weak AI or narrow AI, these are programs that are trained to do a specific task, and we're familiar with those. Siri, Alexa, Watson, the IBM program that played chess, or Deep Blue that can compete, things like Jeopardy. These are programs that are built to serve a specific purpose, but they're actually just responding to a specific question, or they respond to a specific task. The other type of AI is strong AI, and there are two types of strong AI. One is artificial general intelligence, and the other is artificial superintelligence. Superintelligence is what everybody's worried about. Those are computers that are smarter than people. And the best example of that is from 2001, A Space Odyssey, where we had the computer HAL, and HAL started to disobey the users. He took over the spaceship, refused to close the doors. That technology is in its infancy.
Right.
We don't really have any practical applications of super artificial intelligence. However, we do have artificial general intelligence, and those are machines that can converse. People write about this as saying a machine that is as intelligent as a human. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. I think what we're talking about is a machine that can converse using language with a human. And it can generate language, but it's only generating language. It's really not generating thought. It's really not making unique or novel decisions, but it is putting together conversations.
Right, because what it does, and even ChatGPT does, is it pulls from information. Now, of course, these types of programs are going to get stronger and stronger because as things like the internet continue to grow exponentially, all of that content, especially the written word, the language-based content, it can pull from all of that. And so, you can develop this program, or clearly they have developed this program that can go out and collect all this information. And so when you ask it a question, or you say something to it, it can pull words out of what you've said, and very quickly, because the processing speed is incredibly fast, you can pull information from the internet to assemble a response. That is, again, it's maybe a novel response. It's only based upon the information that it collects from the internet. And so, yeah, when we talk about it only being as smart as a human, what we're saying is that it's collecting information that humans created, that humans generated. It's not creating information that humans haven't yet created. And
that's right.
Intelligence.
It makes the internet it's a vast universe of information in language format. Okay. So you have all this information. What ChatGPT does, when you ask it a question, it goes onto the internet and gathers this vast amount of information. The difference is it can answer a question in conversational ways. It builds a language-based response to a question, but it's only gathering the information that's already on the internet. Back in the 90s, I was teaching at the University of Texas, and we were having a discussion about students just wanted to go to the internet to do research. And we kept saying, it's all the information you need isn't on the internet. You have to go to the library and look stuff up because now it's all out there. In the past generation, since the 90s, now the internet does contain all that vast amount of information. And so what these programs do is they jump to the internet, gather the information, and bring it back.
Yeah. So as we look at this and trying to gather some information, because we've, like everyone else, we've heard about this ChatGPT. Looking around, and we found an article as we often do, find an article in Psychology Today. The
Yeah.
link will be in the show notes, but it's written by Mike Brooks, and he's a psychologist in Austin, and he's writing about ChatGPT, and the subtitle is it the beginning of the end? And I think a lot of people are worried about this because, especially in certain fields, people are really worried about this, and I think that the worry is justified. I think that there is some cause to be worried about some of this.
It could be the beginning of the end of some things. And we're going to talk about that in a second, because Brooks, in this article, he sort of explains all this stuff and talks about GPT will create original content. It uses a type of AI, artificial intelligence, known as natural language processing. The English language has a logical structure to it. And what the computer knows that structure, and it knows to put words in a certain order, okay? And so it uses that natural language processing, okay? The difference is it can interact with you as if it was a person.
Right.
And so you could ask it to write something for you, and it will generate a paragraph or a paper.
Right. And part of some of the interviews that I've heard where people have talked about their experience with ChatGPT, they have said, they asked it to write an essay or a book chapter that that pulls from these types of sources, that is written in this type of in this general tone, and within a few seconds it can generate significant amounts of content that's really difficult to tell who wrote it, whether the original author wrote it or if it was that you can't tell that it was computer generated.
You could ask it to write, I want a college level essay on some aspect of Shakespeare. You could also ask it to write a children's book.
Yeah.
And it will do whatever level you want.
Right.
I want a high school level paper. I want a elementary level. I want something typically written by a fourth grader on this topic. And it'll write it as a fourth grader would write it.
Right.
Okay. And so you can see immediately what the implications are just in education.
Right.
Okay. Now that's what we're going to mainly talk about today, is education. I thought of some psychological applications of this, and it is sort of frightening, when you think about what you could do with this.
Right. Yes. So the author of the article, he says, we've been fussing and worrying about TikTok and all these other social issues, and suddenly there's an 800-pound gorilla in the room that we didn't even see coming.
Right. It arrived in November of 2022.
Right.
It's like 2 months old, right? And nobody knew it just suddenly it appeared, and now we're dealing with this thing.
Yeah. And so it's developed by OpenAI, and you can still create a free account and use the software or the application. And again, it's really concerning to think about that, especially those of us who teach at the college level or even high school level, where we're asking students to generate original content that that they develop or that they create and write. And here's a program that can do it for them. They could have access to it. And now I don't know how it relates or how it would work if you put it through some of the programs that we have for looking at like plagiarism and things like that. But if ChatGPT is creating, original text,
you wouldn't pick it up. Right. And so Brooks calls this, he said it's like having a personal, omniscient digital assistant.
Yeah.
And he said it would be like having the most intelligent person in the world sitting beside you.
Right.
He calls it a PODA, P-O-D-A, personal, omniscient digital assistant. You can ask it anything, any question at all, and it'll go out there and gather the information and write a story, write a paper, write a thesis, a research paper about it. Okay. Now, As with other technologies, it promises to make our life easier because what the developers are saying is that it will take over these repetitive, boring tasks that we're doing. And and um and that would free us up to do more creative problem solving and innovation and all that stuff. But as we learned with email, it promised to make life easier. But lo and behold, we're all complaining about how much time we have to spend answering emails. Okay,
Right.
so there is we talk about unintended consequences, and there are bound to be some unintended consequences with this.
Right.
Um, this technology, I think, what everybody's saying about it is it does have the capacity to be a major disruptor. It can radically change many things that we currently do. Okay,
Right.
and if you think for a moment about, you have Siri or Alexa and you give it a command, imagine if you could have a conversation with Alexa.
Right.
Okay, if Alexa, if that voice talks back to you. Now, Bernie, I didn't know this, but there's a movie called Her.
Yep.
You probably know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy, he actually falls in love with his cell phone, or with his cell phone.
Yeah, but it's, and there've actually been a number of movies and programs related to this, but it's the idea of, you know, artificial intelligence becoming so
Intelligent.
so intelligent, so consistent with human interaction,
right,
that you forget that it's a machine, that you forget that it's actually, you know, not a person that you're talking to, that it's a, you know, you start to interact with it as though it is another person.
And it's trained to talk to you. Okay, it adapts to you, your syntax and your accent and your vocabulary.
Right.
Okay, so if you're talking to it as a graduate student, that's one thing. If you're talking to it as a 10th grader, it talks to you as a 10th grader. It
Right.
adjusts to you, your syntax and semantics.
And that's part of why it's referred to as artificial intelligence, or intelligence specifically, because it is constantly learning.
Right.
It's picking up, and you know, the more that you edit, the more that you, like you said, the more that you talk to it, the more it understands and the more it learns from you to become more similar to you. And again, that's how, like in shows like Her and other movies, that line between what's
right
and what's not human becomes blurry, because the more that it becomes like you, the more that it can communicate in the way that you communicate, the more difficult it's going to be for you to remember that it's, you know,
right,
that it is a machine.
And you know, this brings up the topic of sentient, S-E-N-T-I-E-N-T. There's a big discussion now with computers is, are they sentient? Do they have emotions? And at this point, it really doesn't matter. We don't have to get to sentient, because we're already at a place where this thing is communicating to us very much like a person. Yeah. So there's another danger out there that has nothing to do with whether they can generate feelings or whether it's emotional or not. We endow it with that emotion. We're giving it emotion. That's what the movie Her is about. It doesn't have, the program doesn't have to be sentient. We're endowing it with anthropomorphic qualities. You know, we're treating Siri like a real person.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. We already are doing that.
Yeah. So when it comes to ChatGPT, and we've kind of talked about the concerns, even from an educational perspective, from, you know, elementary through graduate school, you know, if you can have a program create an essay for you or write a paper for you, you know, it's going to get back to, why should a person use their time to do that? You know, you started out by saying, you know, we can use this kind of these kinds of programs to do those kinds of tasks so that we can do more creative things. So that, and you know, it makes me think about what has happened to handwriting. You know, schools rarely teach handwriting anymore.
They don't teach penmanship.
There are a lot of memes and jokes about, you know, if you want to communicate with your partner and you don't want your kids to know what you're talking about, write it in cursive, because they don't learn cursive anymore.
That's right. It's not taught.
It just looks like another language,
Right.
because everything's typed and everything now. And so are we going to get to a point where, okay, we really don't have to think about writing anymore? You can get, this chatbot
Right.
to write the paper for you, and all you have to
Mhm.
do is go in and edit it. Make sure the
Right.
grammar's right and that it's written in your style,
Mhm.
which is far easier than generating the ideas and all yourself. And
Bernie, when you were in
a lot of
graduate school,
concerns.
when you were in graduate school and you studied statistics, did the professors say, well, you really need to learn to do this by hand, even though we have computers, we
Yeah,
want you to learn how to do it by hand so that you have some deeper understanding,
yeah,
right? Do they
yeah.
do that anymore?
Yeah, I did when I was in graduate school. We spent a lot of time doing everything by hand, and then of course, then we learned the program, and it's like, my gosh, that was so much easier than what we did. But yes, you had to understand the relationship between the different variables
Right.
in content. Um,
But I don't know that it's taught I don't know that we make students do that anymore.
yeah, I don't know. I
And
don't know.
then same with the multiplication tables.
Mhm.
Should kids memorize the multiplication tables? We have calculators, we have watches that you can calculate. Is there any value in taking time to learn the multiplication tables when you have a calculator that can do it quickly?
Right,
And it goes all the way back to Socrates. Socrates was opposed to teaching children how to read.
right,
He said, well, if they know how to read, why would they memorize anything? Because in his day, the value was memorization.
right.
That was the educational standard. You had to be able to memorize things. And he said, my goodness, if they can read, well, they're going to stop memorizing. Okay. So we see this fear with each technology starting 2,000 years ago with Socrates, and we see it currently with penmanship, you
Right,
know, um, learning how to write cursive.
right.
Um, why write cursive if you can put it on a keyboard? Okay. And so, but this technology, at least what people are saying, has a different threat or a different feel.
Hmm.
As people are really concerned about what it could mean, at least in educational circles, what it could mean to their whole writing process. Why would anybody learn how to write if a machine can do it better?
Well, I think that the biggest concern, in my mind at least,
Mhm.
and at least at this level of my knowledge about the whole process and everything, my concern is, as we talked about from the very beginning of this podcast, these programs only pull from what's available.
That's right.
It doesn't
That's right.
generate new ideas. And so when you're writing, you and I have talked about before, at least between the two of us,
Mhm.
one of the most important reasons to write is that it makes you think about how you're communicating things, but it also generates new ideas. If you really want to understand something, write about it, because
Right.
that puts you in a situation where you really have to understand what you're writing about, and it generates new ideas and it generates new thoughts. Well, if you have a program writing it and that program is just pulling from what's already available, there's no new ideas being created,
Right.
no
That's
new
correct.
connections being made. And so we start getting to a place where, yes, we have lots of really nice papers being written, but there's nothing new coming out of anything.
Being created. Right. Mhm.
And that to me is the biggest concern, because I think that, we already have an issue with not really valuing critical thinking and that kind of thing as much as we should. And this is
Mhm.
going to sort of this could potentially take it then to another level where not only are we not critically thinking, but even when we're writing and having to, and would presumably be in a position where we have to think more expansively,
Right.
we don't do that because we're just having something else write it.
Because we don't need to. And you're
Right.
right. That the issue is that the creative aspect of this, that any of these computer programs currently, we're not talking about supercomputers that might someday have that capacity, but given our level of technology, given today's technology, all we can do is extract what's on the internet and
Hmm.
put it into reasonable prose
Right.
that's readable. Okay. And it will it's responding to our request. Um, so the issue then becomes, this is another one of those cases where is technology outpacing biology?
Right.
There used to be the idea that what was it? Technology doubles every 2 years or something.
Something like that.
And now it's like every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That it's outpacing. And Brooks in his article talks about Martin Luther King saying, we now have missiles that, how did he put it? We now have guided missiles, but misguided humans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And those two, and we do, our technology far outweighs our biological and especially our moral
Mm-hmm.
compasses. We have a technology that that in the wrong hands could be a potential problem. So this technology, this whole generative, the ability to generate language, holds much promise, but it also contains within it some dangers, some threats.
Right.
Certainly, it has the potential to change the way we're doing things.
Right.
At least in education.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you know, given what you were just saying, it's very likely that, you know, a couple of weeks after we post this podcast, there will be some changes with it, and you know, suddenly it can do some new things that
Right.
you know, that it can't do right now as we sit here today, or that it learns some other aspects of communicating and generating that that it can't do right now, and it happens so fast
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, that it is difficult to keep up. And again, I think that the concern from a sort of a moralistic perspective is, so is all of this becoming available faster than we can decide whether or not it should be available?
Right. Right. I mean, it's going to be, I think kids are already writing. I think there are students already writing papers using ChatGPT and turning those papers in.
Right.
I think it's already here.
Right.
Okay?
Right. So again,
And
it's available and out there before we even realize that whether or not it should be available.
yeah. Or how we should deal with it. I mean, it's going to take, it could take months or years for universities, for example, to develop policies
Mm-hmm.
related to ChatGPT as it exists today. Well, 2 years from now, it's going to be completely different.
Right.
And probably much improved. I guess it's possible for everybody to build their own
Right.
program, right?
Right.
I mean, that's my understanding, is that you
can
could go to the internet and take, Google it and take 8 quick steps to build your own ChatGPT and start using it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's available. And again, we see it on websites and we see it on phone calls and things like that. And so it is here. It's not, as we've talked about so many other things, it's not going anywhere.
No.
It's here, and it's going to be, we're going to be interacting with it, and it's going to have an influence. And it's just important that we're aware of it and just cognizant of the potential implications of it, so that we can make decisions that you know, that are in our best interests and is going to suit, you know, especially those people who use it in ways that maybe aren't the best ways to use it.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, that, people who write newspaper articles, I mean, this would be a boon to them. I mean, they'd have it written, the columns would be written for them. Okay. Right. And then you could just edit it and turn it in. But I also think of, one of the problems we're dealing with teenagers is going on the internet to get to see if they have a diagnosis or not. So they go to TikTok, and imagine going to this and having a conversation about your symptoms and how much information would be generated. What are the symptoms of ADHD and or bipolar disorder, and it will generate an entire explanation that then a person, what will that person do with that information?
Absolutely.
So you can think of all kinds of ways that it could change the way we do things in medicine and education and law, in newspaper reporting, magazine articles,
Yeah.
it could have a significant effect.
Absolutely. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll talk about it when as we learn more things about it. But do inform yourself and make yourself aware of what this is and some of those potential implications.
Right. Yep.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Until next time.
That's it for January.
That is it for January.
Right.
Yeah.
Last one.
Next week will be our first weekend of the second month. So
correct.
All right. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.